Today, I thought it would be fun if we dive into Taylor Swift's lyrics to see if she has the same exact personality disorder that I have, borderline personality disorder. Just as a general disclaimer, we're not actually trying to diagnose Taylor with anything. What I hope to do with this video is both highlight some of Taylor's awesome lyrics and some of my favorite songs by her, as well as help kind of normalize borderline personality disorder and spread information about it in a fun, interesting way. I'm not a licensed therapist or psychologist. I'm just someone who loves music and who loves mental health and wants to educate people. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go through all 9 symptoms of borderline personality disorder. And for Taylor to meet the diagnostic criteria for BPD, she has to have 5 out of the 9 symptoms in order to qualify. So let's go ahead and start with symptom number 1, unstable relationships. People with BPD tend to have relationships that are intense and short-lived. You may fall in love quickly, believing that each new person is the one who will make you feel whole, only to be quickly disappointed. Your relationships either seem perfect or horrible without any middle ground. Your lovers, friends, or family members may feel like they have emotional whiplash as a result of your rapid swings from idealization to devaluation, anger, and hate. Now, looking at this symptom, do we really even have to analyze any of her lyrics? It's very obvious from a lot of Taylor Swift's lyrics that she has extremely intense relationships. King of My Heart is actually one of the best songs that captures how BPD-esque her love is, as within the first few lines of the song, we established that Taylor Swift and this person have met just recently with the line, "We met a few weeks ago." And throughout the song, we can see that Taylor Swift idealizes this person and puts them on a pedestal despite having just met them, and feels like they're gonna make her complete and whole. And all at once, you are the one I've been waiting for. King of my heart, body, and soul. I'll never let you go, king of my heart. We can see this is perfectly in line with that BPD thing of, idealizing someone, first meeting them, thinking they're the best person ever, and they're going to fix all your problems within just a little bit of time of knowing them. We can also just see general instability in her relationships, with her having several on and off again relationships. The song Never Getting Back Together is the most obvious example of this, but even in the song Clean, she talks about how it was months and months of back and forth, again indicating that there's constant kind of instability or tension across several different relationships for Taylor Swift. The song Don't Blame Me is also a, perfect example of the way Taylor Swift seems to view love, at least within her music, seeing it as a drug, something that makes you crazy, that's extremely good, and has lows and highs, right? And again, this is a perfect example of that BPD love, extremely over the top, intense, emotional. Wonderland also kind of captures this feeling, a love with extreme highs. Maroon as well captures this feeling of a relationship that starts off really good but has both extremely high moments and extremely low moments. The Great War is comparing a relationship to a war, so I don't know if it gets more intense than that. And obviously, the one that kind of takes the cake for being the most BPD unstable relationship song is Blank Space. But we can't really use that song because Taylor Swift herself has said it is satirical and doesn't actually represent how she feels on relationships. But I think these songs alone, we can clearly see a consistent pattern of unstable relationships within Taylor Swift's life that are extremely intense and filled with highs and lows, which perfectly categorizes the kind of unstable relationships that people with BPD have. So we can probably say she has the symptom. The next symptom is fear of abandonment. So fear of abandonment and BPD is typically kind of marked by a person being very scared someone's going to leave and then making frantic efforts in order to, make them stay. So I think the first most obvious song that pops to mind is Say Don't Go. She's begging her lover to give some kind of indication that they want her to stay. But aside from that, Taylor Swift's kind of fear of abandonment really shows up in interesting ways in her music. She often doesn't necessarily say that she is scared of her partner leaving, though she does say that on songs like New Year's Day with lines like, "Please don't ever become a stranger whose laugh I could recognize anywhere." Again, kind of asking her partner, please don't leave me. But it actually comes out more in her sense of a relationship is doomed before it even starts. And we see this on several different songs, most notably being Wildest Dreams. With the whole song's premise being that the relationship she's in is really good, but it's going to end. And she goes into all relationships with that kind of idea. And also on the song, again, Say Don't Go, I Knew That We Were a Shot in the Darkest Dark. A lot of different songs that she has have this idea of like love is doomed from the start. And this is a common theme. And again, ties back to that fear of abandonment, because many people with BPD, when they enter into a relationship, they're already afraid it's not going to work out, and that's what makes them so scared of the other person leaving, because in their head it's already a fixed outcome. We also see the same exact thing reflected in the song Antihero. I wake up screaming from dreaming, one day I'll watch as you're leaving because you got tired of my scheming. Again, obviously she's scared of abandonment. And in the archer as well, but who could stay? Again, she's asking who is going to stay. She has this constant doubt that people will stick around. And then when people do leave, it hurts her a lot, right? Songs like Fortnite, Down Bad, pretty much anything off the Tortured Poets department, we can see that there's an intense amount of agony that Taylor Swift faces whenever she loses someone that she loves. Songs like All Too Well also demonstrate this incredibly well. So we can see she has the components for that fear of abandonment, where she assumes people are going to leave, she's afraid of them leaving, and when they do leave, it really hurts. So there's good reason for her to be afraid. So I would say most likely she does have the symptom, and she does display it quite outwardly in her music. Now the next symptom is unclear or shifting self-image. When you have BPD, your sense of self is typically unstable. Sometimes you may feel good about yourself, but other times you hate yourself or even view yourself as evil. You probably don't have a clear idea of who you are or what you want in life. As a result, you may frequently change jobs, friends, lovers, religion, values, goals, or even sexual identity. So this symptom at first seems to be something that doesn't really show up in Taylor Swift's music very often. However, 2 songs actually do talk about this exact thing really well, and the first one is Mirror Ball. This whole song is about her kind of reflecting other people really well and being able to kind of mimic other people's personalities and kind of be a chameleon. I'll show you every version of yourself tonight. I'll get you out on the floor, shimmering beautiful, and when I break, it's in a million pieces. People with BPD know all too well that we tend to kind of mimic other people's personalities when we don't really have our own personality. And this is exactly what this unstable self-image is, right? So Mirror Ball talks about this, but another song that really hits on this point well is Antihero. Antihero actually encompasses a lot of what it feels like to have BPD, and it perfectly encapsulates this feeling of feeling like you are not a good person, or that you're evil, or not really knowing who you are. In fact, in one of her kind of interview clips, she talks about this exact thing. Here's a quote from Taylor talking about this. Antihero is one of my favorite songs I've ever written. I really don't think I've delved this far into my insecurities in this detail before. I struggle with the idea that my life has become unmanageably sized, and not to sound too dark, but I just struggle with the idea of not feeling like a person. And obviously the line, sometimes I feel like everybody is a sexy baby and I'm a monster up on the hill, and referring to herself as Antihero, kind of give this feeling of not liking yourself, of not really knowing who you are. And this quote we kind of talked about too, where she doesn't feel like a person, perfectly ties into the next symptom we're going to be talking about, which is chronic feelings of emptiness. People with BPD often talk about feeling empty, as if there's a hole or a void inside of them. At the extreme, you may feel as if you're nothing or nobody. This feeling is uncomfortable, so you may try to fill the void with things like drugs, food, or sex, but nothing feels truly satisfying. And again, in that quote we kind of just read from that Antihero interview, we can see she talks exactly about this throughout the entire song, and especially in the quote when she says, "I just struggle with the idea of not feeling like a person." And speaking of this urge to kind of numb the void with self-destructive behaviors, we move into the next symptom of BPD, which is impulsive self-destructive behaviors. If you have BPD, you may engage in harmful sensation-seeking behaviors, especially when you're upset. You may impulsively spend money you can't afford, binge eat, drive recklessly, shoplift, engage in risky sex, or overdo it with drugs and alcohol. These risky behaviors may help you feel better in the moment, but they hurt you and those around you in the long run. So the most obvious thing that we can point at are kind of the alcoholism lines that Taylor Swift has kind of peppered everywhere throughout her lyrics. So the first line, again, in Antihero is, "I should not be left to my own devices. They come with prices, and vices, I end up in crisis." So again, she has vices, which are, these kind of unhealthy, self-destructive habits that lead her into crisis. Also lines like, "I got wasted like all my potential. I was a functioning alcoholic till nobody noticed my new aesthetic. And my fourth drink in my hand," from Dear Reader. All of these different lines really point heavily to her kind of tendency to use alcoholism as a coping mechanism for how she feels. It definitely counts in that self-destructive category. The whole song, Dear Reader, honestly encapsulates incredibly toxic mindsets and problematic ways of thinking that are very self-destructive. Dear Reader itself could be all the proof we really need that she has this symptom. Now, the next symptom we're going to be looking at is feeling suspicious or out of touch with reality. People with BPD often struggle with paranoia or suspicious thoughts about others' motives. When under stress, you may even lose touch with reality, an experience known as dissociation. You may feel foggy, spaced out, or as if you're outside your own body. So this is super hard to kind of pinpoint in a lot of Taylor Swift's lyrics. The only thing where she really demonstrates this kind of paranoia is this kind of paranoia that people are going to leave, as we kind of talked about in the fear of abandonment part. But the only other thing I can really see is in the song Antihero, where she talks about, again, how her daughter-in-law is going to, unalive her so that she can get her inheritance. and they think about how she's laughing up at them from hell. That's a very good example of paranoia, but there really isn't much of this dissociation thing. People with BPD under immense amount of stress will just kind of dissociate. And there aren't many songs that Taylor Swift has where she explicitly talks about this experience. So I will say for Taylor Swift, she likely does not deal with this. Now, the next one we're going to talk about, again, a bit of a trigger warning, is kind of, unaliving yourself or hurting yourself. Again, do not condone these things at all. And I do have timestamps in the description if you want to skip over this section if it may be triggering for you. So again, with this one, there aren't really many strong, concrete lyrics I can point to say she definitely has these kinds of feelings or urges, right? The biggest one I can see is like on Down Bad, where she says, I could die, it could make no difference. Or there's another line where she says, pulled the car off the road to the lookout, could have followed my fears all the way down. And then of course, her general kind of self-destructive thoughts on Antihero and on Dear Reader. But again, I don't really think we can definitively say she deals with these things, although she definitely does seem to deal with thoughts of depression, but not necessarily unaliving herself or hurting herself. Now, the next symptom is extreme mood swings. So for people with BPD, they'll often alternate between feeling really good and really bad, and it'll kind of happen out of nowhere. And for Taylor Swift, surprisingly, a lot of her lyrics don't necessarily show this. She will show lows and highs when she's in relationships, but just from day-to-day life, it doesn't really seem that she has these kind of lows and highs. The best songs that kind of just display her emotional instability in general are Antihero and Dear Reader. Both of these songs really show that she has really high highs and really low lows. But again, I don't know if these two songs alone are really enough to justify this specific thing, because they are more about sadness rather than feeling highs and lows and general emotional instability. However, with the themes that those songs kind of carry, I can definitely see that it would be possible for her to potentially have this symptom. Now, the last thing that we're going to dive into is explosive anger. If you have BPD, you may struggle with intense anger and a short temper. You may also have trouble controlling yourself once the fuse is lit, yelling, throwing things, or becoming completely consumed by rage. It's important to note that this anger isn't always directed outwards. You may spend a lot of time feeling angry at yourself. So if you've ever heard Reputation, yeah, she probably has this symptom. But I think what's interesting to highlight is when we do look at albums like Reputation and stuff like that, and maybe songs like Mr. Perfectly Fine, she's in a lot of pain, right? And also the entire world was against her during these albums, so it makes sense for her to be mad. But I think what is more interesting is the anger she directs toward herself, because we have countless examples of lyrics where she's angry at someone else, right? In my words, shoot to kill, when I'm mad, and then the world moves on, but one thing's for sure, maybe I got mine, but then you'll all get yours. I'll be the actress starring in your bad dreams. I don't trust nobody and nobody trusts me. Haha, I can't even say it with a straight face. She says this when she's talking about forgiveness, which is pretty funny. The entire song, I did something bad. You get the point. There's lots of lyrics about Taylor Swift being really angry at someone else, but with BPD, anger can also be self-directed. And I think Taylor Swift has this 100% because of the song I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. In this song, she shows unrelenting anger towards herself. She makes herself do things that no one should ever force themselves to do. Being completely heartbroken, depressed, wanting to cry, being on the verge of a breakdown, and forcing yourself to just keep on going out there and smiling and performing for other people. This is something that only someone with this trait of BPD can have. There's a kind of form of BPD called quiet BPD. I actually did a TED talk on this, which I'll link down in the description below. But this is a very common form of, anger expression that people don't pick up on often, where you express your anger towards yourself by making yourself do things that are very just inhumane, very cruel, forcing yourself to continue working, invalidating your emotions, telling yourself it's not a big deal, you're just a baby, and just kind of being really mean to yourself. And Taylor Swift does this on that song, and it's really sad and heartbreaking to hear. So we could say she very likely has this anger kind of symptom, but it's more directed at herself rather than at other people necessarily, although it could go both ways. So in conclusion, we can say that Taylor Swift, if we pretend that I'm a psychologist and that all of her lyrics are valid and there's nothing wrong with this video, we can say that she probably has BPD. She suffers from about 6 to 7 symptoms of BPD, which is well past the 5 out of 9 that you would need in order to get a diagnosis. The symptoms she has are unstable relationships, fear of abandonment, chronic feelings of emptiness, unstable or shifting self-image, impulsive self-destructive behaviors, and possibly emotional mood swings and or explosive anger. Even without those though, she would still have definitely met the criteria for BPD. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hoped it helped you learn a little bit more maybe about Taylor Swift or about BPD, and I hope it was a fun, engaging way to learn about all of these symptoms, and I hope you enjoyed diving into these lyrics. And if you're still watching, leave a comment down below. Talk about some lyrics that maybe I forgot to mention in this video, or that you think would be interesting to kind of bring up or discuss and talk about. If there are any songs you want me to analyze and kind of relate them to a mental health context, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Have a wonderful day.